Hydrocephalus. Before dealing the detail, let us see the ventricular system of human brain. The ventricular system consists of two lateral ventricle, one on right and the other is on left, one third ventricle, then another fourth ventricle, and the cerebral aqueduct connects third ventricle and fourth ventricle. The fourth ventricle continues as central canal of the spinal cord. The CSF is secreted by choroid plexus, mainly of lateral ventricles. Coming to hydrocephalus, the term derived from two Greek words, namely hydro and cephalus. Hydro means water and cephalus means head. This condition is literally known as water in the brain. Coming to definition, hydrocephalus is a condition caused by an imbalance in the production and absorption of CSF in the ventricular system. If there is imbalance in the production and the absorption within the ventricular system, that leads to water logging in the head called hydrocephalus. When the production exceeds, the CSF accumulates, usually under pressure, causing dilatation of ventricle. Another definition is buildup of fluid inside the skull leading to brain swelling. In the slide, you can see a normal brain with a normal ventricle and no hydrocephalus. Here you can see dilated ventricle with the collection of CSF within the ventricular system leading to hydrocephalus. You can see here this much is the brain matter or brain parenchyma. Here the dilated ventricle exerts pressure on the brain parenchyma so that it become or compressed within the rigid skull and the enlarging ventricular system. Coming to incidence, primary hydrocephalus, that is hydrocephalus without any associated defects like spina bifida, is seen in 1 in 2000 live birth. It is the most common developmental disability and it is more common associated with the Down syndrome, and it is the leading cause of brain surgery in children. Coming to the causes. According to the causes, we can classify hydrocephalus into congenital hydrocephalus and acquired hydrocephalus. Congenital means present by birth. The causes of hydrocephalus at the time of birth include intrauterine infections like rubella, cytomegalovirus, toxoplasmosis, trauma including subarachnoid hemorrhage, intracranial hemorrhage and intraventricular hemorrhage, congenital malformation like Dandy-Walker syndrome. Here the posterior fossa cyst continues with the fourth ventricle. We will see later what is Dandy-Walker syndrome or Dandy-Walker cyst. Congenital causes continues due to stenosis or narrowing of the cerebral aqueduct that connect the third ventricle to fourth ventricle. There is CSF. Then another problem is ulnar-Chiari malformation, that is portion of the cerebellum and brainstem herniate into the cervical spinal, causing the flow of CSF into the spinal subarachnoid space. Herniation of cerebellum and brainstem into the cervical canal, causing obstruction of the flow of CSF down to the spinal cord. That is called the Arnold-Chiari syndrome. The second type of hydrocephalus according to cause is acquired. Acquired causes include tuberculosis, chronic pyogenic meningitis, post-intraventricular hemorrhage, posterior fossa tumors like medulloblastoma, astrocytoma, ependymoma, arteriovenous malformation, intracranial hemorrhage and ruptured aneurysm. Now we will see pathophysiology related to cerebral hydrocephalus. Here already we have discussed in the beginning the ventricular system. The CSF is secreted at the choroid plexus within the ventricle, mainly within the lateral ventricle, by two mechanisms called ultrafiltration and active secretion. Once it is secreted in the lateral ventricle, it flows into third ventricle through an opening called foramen of Monro. From the third ventricle, it flows to fourth ventricle through aqueduct of Sylvius. Then, from fourth ventricle, it enters the cisterna magna through lateral foramen of Lasca and foramen of Magendie through four openings, namely foramen of Lasca and foramen of Magendie, which are paired. It enters the cisterna magna. From the cisterna magna, it goes into cerebral and cerebellar subarachnoid space. A large portion is absorbed through arachnoid villi in the subarachnoid space, but the sinuses, vein, and brain substance dura also participate in the absorption. Mainly it is absorbed by arachnoid villi, and also it is absorbed by sinus, veins, brain matter, and dura. About the production, it is produced at a rate of 20 ml in an hour, and a total CSF approximately 50 ml in an infant and 150 ml in an adult. The total amount of CSF circulating within the ventricular system is around 50 ml in an infant and 150 ml in a child. It is absorbed and produced at a rate of about 20 ml per hour. This is the picture that we have already discussed. Forward plexus within the lateral ventricle mainly. It flows into third ventricle through foramen of Monro. Then through aqueduct of Sylvius it flows into fourth ventricle. Then through four paired opening it enters the subarachnoid space. Here you can see normal ventricle and the dilated ventricle with the increased CSF accumulation. In the pathophysiology, according to the flow of CSF, there are two types of hydrocephalus, non-communicating and communicating. First, about non-communicating type. It is also called intraventricular and obstructive type. There is no communication or there is no free flow of CSF. So it is called an intraventricular or obstructive type. Here there is a blockage between the ventricular and the subarachnoid system, resulting in interference in the circulation of CSF and lack of access into subarachnoid space. As a result, the ventricle is filled with the CSF. This can lead to gradual thinning of brain substance which is compressed between the distended ventricle and the skull. In communicating hydrocephalus, there is no communication or there is no free flow of CSF, or the flow of CSF is obstructed between ventricular system and the subarachnoid space. Non-communicating hydrocephalus may be due to stenosis of aqueduct or any other congenital defect or some other acquired causes. It is also called obstructive hydrocephalus. It can result from brain tumors that put pressure on the ventricle or the circulation pathway from outside the ventricular system. It can be caused by causes within the ventricle or causes outside the ventricles like brain tumors. Coming to second type, that is communicating hydrocephalus. It is also called extraventricular hydrocephalus. In this case, there is normal communication between ventricle and the spinal subarachnoid space. In non-communicating type, there is blockage between ventricle and the spinal subarachnoid space. Here there is normal flow of CSF between ventricle and spinal subarachnoid space. But there is an interference with the absorption of CSF, which is caused by occlusion of the subarachnoid system around the brainstem. The fluid is not absorbed, hence it accumulates, compressing the brain and distending the cranial cavity. Here the problem is with the absorption of CSF or increased production of CSF, but the communication is normal. It can also be due to subarachnoid hemorrhage or meningitis, toxoplasmosis, cytomegalovirus infection. In these cases, there is obliteration of subarachnoid space by fibrous tissue, or it can also be due to some diseases of the connective tissue. Once already we have seen the CSF is absorbed by arachnoid villi in the subarachnoid space. So if the subarachnoid space itself is obliterated due to some of the infection or connective tissue diseases, there is no arachnoid villi to absorb. there is impaired absorption leading to accumulation, causing communicating hydrocephalus. About the clinical manifestation of this disease. It can vary in infants and children. First, about in infants. There is increased head circumference or excessive growth of the head at an abnormal rate. The anterior fontanelle is tense and it will be bulging. We can see the dilated scalp vein. And another two typical signs are McBean sign and sun setting sign or setting sun sign. In McBean sign, with the increase in intracranial volume, the bones of the skull become thin and the sutures become palpably separated to produce cracked port sound on percussion of the skull. Otherwise, we can say, since the brain is going on enlarging, the skull bone become very thin and the sutures within the surrounding the skull become widely separated like a crack in a pot. So when you tap on a pot, you can listen a sound. Similarly, when you tap on this child's head or when you percuss on this child's head, you can listen a sound similar to cracked pot sound. That is called a McBean sign. Then, along with the McBean sign, or in this case, we can see frontal bossing or forward bulging of the frontal bone. And the sign is setting sun sign. That is, the eyes rotated downward, in which the sclera may be visible above the iris. This is the setting sun sign. The sclera is visible and you can see the iris is sinking within the eye like a setting sun in the sea. Here you can see frontal bossing, enlargement of the skull and visible veins in the forehead. Also the shining skin. The features in an infant continues. There is poor feeding. Pupils will be very sluggish and unequal response to light. There may be changes in level of consciousness. Opisthotonous position or arc-like posturing of the back and lower extremity spasticity may be seen. The child cries when picked up and quiet when allowed to lie still. If the hydrocephalus is allowed to progress, there will be disruption in the lower brainstem function as manifested by difficulty in feeding, high-pitched shrill cry, and eventually the skull becomes enlarged and the cortex is destroyed. In childhood, there may be headache on awakening and it will be followed by vomiting, also papilledema, strabismus, irritability, lethargy, apathetic, confused, the speech will be incoherent, and also there can be bulging occiput, nystagmus, ataxia and cranial nerve palsies. About diagnostic evaluation, routine head circumference or daily head circumference measurement, EEG, CT scan, arterioscopy, brain scan with the radioisotope, cranial ultrasound or ultrasound of the brain, lumbar puncture if required, and skull X-ray in rare cases. About management, the management is directed towards relief of hydrocephalus and treatment of complication, management of problem related to effect of disorder on psychomotor development. The treatment is, with a few exceptions, essentially it is the surgical management. We can divide the treatment into medical, surgical and nursing, though it is mainly surgical. Coming to medical management, this is tried in mild cases of hydrocephalus. It aims at reducing the production of CSF. The drug is acetazolamide 50 mg per kg per day and oral glycerol. Coming to the surgical management, which is the cornerstone, it includes removal of obstruction, that is removal of tumor, hemorrhage or cyst, reduction in the amount of CSF produced by choroid plexus, that is by destructing a portion of choroid plexus, which can be done through an opening either in the third ventricle or in the fourth ventricle, destroying the choroid plexus by third ventriculostomy or fourth ventriculostomy, or by making an opening in the third ventricle or the fourth ventricle. Another surgical procedure is shunting. It includes intracranial shunting and extracranial shunting. Intracranial shunting is from one ventricle to another part of the ventricular system. Extracranial shunting is from ventricle to an area outside the CNS, that is, to an extracranial body compartment. Shunting is the most common procedure. The shunt system consists of ventricular catheter, a flash pump, a unidirectional valve, and a distal catheter. All are radio opaque for easy visualization after placement. The main shunting systems include ventriculoperitoneal shunt or VP shunt, which is the most commonly done shunting, ventriculoatrial shunt, ventriculopleural shunt. Other rarely used shunt include ventriculo-gallbladder shunt and ventricular-urinary bladder shunt. About ventriculoperitoneal shunt, since this is the most commonly performed one. This is the preferred procedure, and there is greater allowance for excessive tubing. It minimizes the number of revision needed as the child grows. In this, the ventricular catheter is inserted into lateral ventricle through a burr hole in the skull. An incision is also made in the abdomen and through rectus muscle in the right or left hypochondriacal region. Then, the proximal end of the catheter is slipped under the skin of the anterior abdominal and chest wall to the neck. The ventricular catheter with the valve is attached to the peritoneal catheter or the abdominal end. Thus, the CSF is drained from lateral ventricle into the abdominal cavity. In this image, you can see the placement of the VP shunt. This is the abdominal incision, and the peritoneal end or the abdominal end of the catheter is placed within the peritoneal cavity or abdominal cavity with the coiling. This coiling allows for the lengthening of the tube as the child grows, and it minimizes the number of revision and replacement of the tube. Then once it is placed in the abdominal cavity, it will be tunneled under the skin of the anterior abdominal wall and the anterior chest to the neck. And by putting an incision in the skull or by a burr hole in the skull, the ventricular end will be placed in the lateral ventricle. Here is the placement, the ventricle, the ventricular catheter, and the CSF flows to the peritoneal cavity. Here is the peritoneal end of the catheter. Next, a less commonly used shunt is ventriculoatrial shunt. It is reserved for children who have attained most of the somatic growth. Here, a silicone catheter is inserted between lateral ventricle and the left atrium of the heart through internal jugular vein. Hence, the CSF drain into the circulating blood. Next is a ventriculopleural shunt, where the shunt is placed between lateral ventricle and the pleural cavity. About endoscopic third ventriculostomy. In this procedure, a small opening is made in the floor of third ventricle, allowing the CSF to pass directly into the subarachnoid space, bypassing the aqueduct of Sylvius. About complications of shunt, the major complications are infection and malfunction. Also, all shunt are subjected to mechanical difficulties like kinking, plugging, separation, and migration of the tubing. The malfunction of the tube is due to mechanical obstruction either in the ventricular end or in the peritoneal end. It is a surgical emergency where the child will have sudden manifestations of increased ICP, frequently accompanied by worsening of neurological status. About the shunt infection, this is another serious complication. It can occur at any time, and the greatest risk is 1 to 2 months following the placement. The infection may be as a result of intercurrent infection at the time of shunt replacement. It includes sepsis, bacterial endocarditis, wound infection, shunt nephritis, and meningitis. Another serious complication is subdural hematoma. It occurs when the CSF is very rapidly drained from ventricle into the abdominal cavity, causing reduction of ICP and size of the ventricle. Other complications include peritonitis, abdominal abscess, perforation of abdominal organ by the catheter, trocar, fistulas, and hernias. Nursing management or nursing intervention. Before VP shunt, preoperative nursing care include assess the head circumference, fontanel, cranial sutures, level of consciousness. Also check for irritability, altered feeding habit, and high pitched cry. Then firmly support the neck and head when holding the child. Provide skin care for the head to prevent breakdown. Give small frequent feeding to decrease the risk of vomiting. Encourage parent-newborn bonding. About the important postoperative intervention after VP shunt, assess for signs of increased ICP and check the following: head circumference, anterior fontanel, fullness, and behavior. Administer prescribed medication which may be antibiotic to prevent infection and analgesics for pain. If there is increased ICP, elevate the head end of the bed and allow the child to sit up to enhance gravity flow of shunt as prescribed by the doctor. Observe the child for abdominal distension by measuring abdominal circumference. Also maintain intake and output. Elevate the head to 30 to 45 degree as prescribed by the doctor to aid in venous drainage. Avoid extreme hip flexion because this causes increase in intra-abdominal, intrathoracic pressures resulting in high ICP. Avoid turning the head or be careful while turning the head. Also check for abdominal distension. It also results in the rise of ICP. Provide shunt care, another part of management. Monitor for shunt infection and malfunction which may be characterized by rapid onset of vomiting, headache, irritability, lethargy, fever, redness along the shunt tract and fluid around the shunt valve. Prevent infection usually from Staphylococcus epidermis or Staphylococcus aureus. Then monitor for shunt over drainage that may result in subdural hematoma which can be dizziness, headache and nausea. Over drainage may lead to slit ventricle syndrome whereby the ventricle becomes accustomed to a very small size or slit-like configuration, limiting the buffer ability to increase the ICP variation. Provision of shunt care during the postoperative period is very important, especially to prevent shunt infection over drainage. About home care, encourage the child to participate in age-appropriate activities as tolerated. Encourage the parents to provide normal lifestyle as possible. Explain how to recognize the signs and symptoms of increased ICP. Frequent developmental screening and follow-up are important. Very brief about hydrocephalus. Thanks for watching.